Now, we all know the meaning of jurisdiction. We had studied the meaning of jurisdiction in legal aspects of business when we were discussing the Consumer Protection Act. There we had discussed the meaning of jurisdiction. So the meaning of jurisdiction is the territory or the area where, if any complaint is to be filed, so it's an area where the aggrieved party or the party which has suffered losses in some transaction, that party can file a case. So that is called as jurisdiction. So that is the general meaning of jurisdiction. We all know. Now we will move on to the jurisdiction. What is cyberspace jurisdiction? I hope that you can see my screen and my voice is clear to all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Abhay. So cyberspace jurisdiction, as we have just discussed, in simple words, what is the meaning of jurisdiction? Now we will talk about cyberspace jurisdiction. Now, how this is different from the other civil law or civil court jurisdiction. So jurisdiction, in simple words, or what the definition of cyberspace jurisdiction, first we will just discuss that. I'll be reading out the definition and then we will discuss on this. So jurisdiction is a concept whereby in any legal system, the power to hear or determine a case is vested with an appropriate court. So everywhere jurisdiction plays a very important role. Within that jurisdiction only a person can file a case. Suppose if a person is from Mumbai and he wants to file a case and he had some, say, problem, or he suffered some losses in Mumbai itself, but he wants to file a case in the court of Pune. So here, that person will not be able to file a case in Pune because that particular case does not come under the jurisdiction of Pune court, because the party or the person has to file a case in the Mumbai court only. So jurisdiction, that is the jurisdiction. The main problem of cyber law. Now the main issue starts. The main problem of cyber law jurisdiction is the presence of multiple parties in various parts of the world who have only virtual nexus with each other. Now it is easier to find out what is the jurisdiction of a particular court, and within that particular area, if some crime takes place, the people living in that area, they are aware that they need to go to this particular case court and file a case in it, because that area falls under the jurisdiction of that particular court. That is for common crimes. But when we talk about cyberspace, what is mentioned here, that here virtual nexus is there. Virtually the parties are in connection with each other. Now Mr. A, who is party to the contract, is living in Mumbai, whereas Mr. B, with whom the contract has been entered, may be living in, say, we will assume that he is living in Kanyakumari, or maybe he is living in Sri Lanka or in some another country. So it becomes very difficult for deciding the jurisdiction of the court in cyberspace or in cyber crimes. Now, to overcome this problem, what the provision in the IT Act 2000 says, that if a person, now for example, there are three parties involved. One party is from India, another party who is entering into the contract is from, say, Germany. Now, a Indian national and a German national wants to enter into a contract. So people from different countries, they want to enter into a contract. In such cases, if there is some fraud, if one of the party feels that the other party has cheated the another party, then what will be the jurisdiction of what will be the jurisdiction under this particular case? So the provision under the IT Act says that the jurisdiction will be the Indian national. As one of the national is from India, he can file the case in India against the German national. But one technical problem is that if the provisions for that particular crime or that particular cheating is different in India, and if it is different in Germany, then it becomes difficult to decide upon the quantum of penalty which can be executed or which can be exercised in such cases. So that is why it is considered as bit difficult when it comes to cyber cases as compared to the other cases. Other cases mean civil cases or criminal cases. Now, Mr. A has murdered Mr. B, and that crime took place in Pune. Now, everyone is aware that if the crime has taken place in Pune, then where the case is to be followed, where the case is to be filed, it has to be filed in Pune court. That is there if we talk about a criminal case or if we talk about a civil case. But that is not the same case if we are talking about cyber related cases. So that is cyberspace jurisdiction. Now we will be taking an example. A single transaction may be involved. A single transaction may involve the laws of at least 3 jurisdictions. I'll be reading the example. Try to understand the example carefully. A single transaction may involve the laws of at least 3 jurisdictions. The laws of the state oblique nation in which the user resides, the law of the state oblique nation that apply where the server hosting the transaction is located, and the laws of the state oblique nation which apply to the person or business with whom the transaction takes place. Now, in one particular case, they have given 3 different locations, and they are saying that one person resides in one country, another person resides in another country, and with the help of the server, both the parties are entering into the contract. That server is located in some another country. So what will happen? So the user of one of the states in USA conducting the transaction with another US in Australia through a server in Chennai could theoretically be subject to laws of all the 3 countries as they relate to the transactions at hand. Now here the jurisdiction mainly where the jurisdiction is to be finalized mainly is that where the resident of the the resident country is the place, we can say that that can be decided as the jurisdiction for cyberspace. Now suppose the national is from Germany, it is from Australia and from US. So Australian feels that American has cheated, so he can file a case in Australia. American feels that the Australian has cheated, then a case can be filed in the America. If they both feel, that the person who was having control over the server has done the fraud, now they can file a case against that person in their respective country, or with the help of their lawyer, they can file a case in India also against the national, against the particular person who is involved in fraud. So that is the example for cyberspace jurisdiction. Now, types of jurisdiction. First one is prescriptive jurisdiction. Second one is jurisdiction to adjudicate. Adjudicate is to decide. The meaning of adjudication is to decide. Next one, jurisdiction to enforce. Now we will discuss these three jurisdiction, the meaning of these three jurisdiction. First one is prescriptive jurisdiction. It is the jurisdiction of the state to make laws applicable to a person and certain circumstances. However, international law exercises limitations on states' authority to prescribe laws if there is a conflict of interest with another state. So as we had discussed earlier at the start of the session, it becomes difficult to make a decision or execute the person if the person is from another country, because the laws of those countries are different, the laws of our country is different. We need to follow certain rules and regulations, certain procedures, then only we can get that person extradited to India, and then the person can be sentenced against that particular case. Next thing is that International Court of Justice is there. There a case can be filed and it can be tried. That person can be tried. So what it says is, it is a jurisdiction, prescriptive jurisdiction. It is a jurisdiction of the state to make laws applicable to the person and certain circumstances. Suppose Indian has been cheated by Australian. The Indian national can file a case in the Indian court. There are provisions for appellate authority, that instead of going to court, there is an authority which is called as appellate tribunal. For speedy justice, this Indian national who feels that he has been cheated by the Australian national in a contract, he can directly file a case in the appellate tribunal, so that speedy justice can be given to this particular person. Now the problem lies is that if the provisions under that, for that particular fraud or cheating, is different in India and it is different in Australian law, when these things clashes, then it becomes difficult to decide upon a case. So that is prescriptive jurisdiction. Next one is jurisdiction to adjudicate. It is a power of state to subject a person or things to court or administrative tribunal, either civil or criminal, whether or not the state is party to the proceedings, if there exists sufficient relationship between the state and the person. So the difference between jurisdiction to adjudicate and prescriptive is, in prescriptive, the person who feels cheated, he need to file a case, and in jurisdiction to adjudicate, it is the power of the state to subject a person or things to court or administrative tribunal. Here the state, that means the country, the state can bring a case against the person if the state is having proof that the person is involved in a type of fraud. So that is jurisdiction to adjudicate. Next one, jurisdiction to enforce. Enforce means forcing something. Is the power of the state to induce or punish for non-compliance with the law. Just a moment. Yes, sorry for the delay. Yes, now jurisdiction. Is my voice clear to all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And so jurisdiction to enforce, as the word itself says, it is enforcing, it is forcing, is the power of the state to induce or punish for non-compliance with laws and regulations. So any person who is not complying with the rules and regulations mentioned under the IT Act, that person can be punished for non-compliance by the court, and that is called as jurisdiction to enforce. Now we will move on to another topic, which is called as electronic commerce. Nowadays, this particular term is used very often. Every one of us is aware of what is electronic commerce. I'll just read out the lines on from the slide, and then we will discuss. Electronic commerce is commonly known as e-commerce or e-com, is buying and selling of products or services over electronic systems. So over electronic systems such as the internet and computer networks. So it is very simple and self-understood. We all know what is electronic commerce. So when we are entering into any type of business related activity, we with the help of internet or with the help of computer networks, that means we are into electronic commerce or e-commerce or e-com. Now e-commerce, we all know that it's a activity, or it's a type of business which is growing very fast nowadays. Particularly the youth, they are more comfortable with buying or selling their products with the help of internet. So instead of going physically to a shop and purchasing the things from the shop, it is convenient mostly for the youngsters. They feel that it is convenient that by sitting at home at any time, they can order anything from the e-commerce sites, and that is called as e-commerce. So e-commerce can be divided into e-tailing or virtual storefronts on websites with online catalogs, sometimes gathered into virtual mall. So for example, Amazon is there, Flipkart is there, then another various other e-commerce sites are there where we can purchase any product which is displayed on that particular e-commerce site very easily, and we can say we can get the delivery very fast also. Next one, electronic data interchange, the business to business exchange of data. So electronic, not only e-tailing is covered under e-commerce, business to business data exchange. So any data which is exchanged from business to business is also covered under e-commerce. Email or fax and their use as media for reaching prospects and established customers is also covered under e-commerce. Last one, business to business buying and selling, that is also covered under e-commerce. So all these things, not only what we are purchasing from say Flipkart or Amazon is covered under e-commerce, but these other platforms are also covered under e-commerce. Now we will discuss that what are the factors which have resulted in the growth of e-commerce in the country as well as in the whole world. 10-15 years back, the growth of e-commerce was very less, or we can say that it was negligible type of growth. But now we are seeing that the growth is enormous and very rapid, and it is growing. It is one of the sector which is growing very fast, or we can say it is the fastest growing sector in the industry. So factors for the growth of e-commerce: first one, increasing broadband internet and 4G penetration. Now 4-5 years back, or yes, 4-5 years back, when Jio was launched, they gave a free facility to all the subscribers that for first 3 months everything will be free. 4G facility was offered to the subscribers, that if you are getting the card of Jio, for first 3 months, internet will be free, calling will be free, and it will be off at 4G speed. Now, with the help of this, we can say that not only in city, but in the rural areas also, people came to know about internet facilities and 4G facilities. They also became aware that sitting at that place, they can shop online. And that was one of the reasons for the growth of e-commerce, particularly in India. Next one, rising standards of living and burgeoning upwardly mobile middle class with high disposable income. So the standard of living in the country is rising. The number of people which were covered under middle class, they are also rapidly rising. The income they are having more income, so they can spend more, and that is again one of the reason for rise of e-commerce. Next one, availability of much wider product range compared to what is available at brick mortar retailers. Brick and mortar retailers means physical retailers. Now suppose if I want to purchase a mobile and I visit a mobile store, I may get to see, say, 5 models, 10 models, or 15 or 20 models. And from that, I need to select one. But if I visit a e-commerce site, if I visit, say, this Flipkart or Amazon or any other such type of site, then I may be able to see hundreds of options for mobile phones. So one of the reason is that options are more. If I want to purchase a shirt and my favorite color is, say, is blue, so what option I will be getting in a store? Maybe 5 options will be there. It can be navy blue, it can be sky blue, dark blue. So these 5, 6, 7, 8 options will be there, or say 10, 15 designs they will be showing. But if I visit the internet sites, then I will be able to, say, see hundreds of options. So options are always more, and that is one of the reason for the growth of the e-commerce. Next one, busy lifestyles, urban traffic congestion, sorry, lack of time for offline shopping. Now, again, this plays a very important role, busy lifestyle. People are busy, then urban traffic congestion. If you want to go for shopping, you are aware to cover a distance of, say, 10 kilometers, you need to spend at least 1 hour in the traffic. And people become frustrated or fed up of traffic. So people, most of the people, they feel that if options are available online, why there is a need to go to a offline shop or a physical shop by spending time as well as by going through that pain of traffic congestion. That is again one of the reason. Next, lower prices compared to brick and mortar retail, driven by intermediation and reduced inventory and real estate costs. So again, very simple and logical reason given here, that if we are purchasing from, if we are purchasing a shirt of, say, Peter England for, say, 1500 rupees from a physical store, that same shirt may be available at Amazon or Flipkart for, say, 800, 900 or 1100 rupees. So lower price. Now justification is also given that why the price is low at these shops. The price is low at these shops, and one of the main reason for lower price is that there is no inventory. There is no, say, a physical shop is not there. The person who is selling the shirts in a physical, from a physical Peter England showroom, he has to pay for that showroom cost. He has to pay for electricity. He has to pay for the employees who are working in that particular showroom. Then he has to take care of other expenses also. He has to keep some sort, he has to do some investment in the inventory. So all such expenses which a physical store has to have is not there when we compare it with online stores. Online store, what they do is they display the items, but they do not keep the inventories with them. Inventories are with the third party. Once we have selected a particular product, that order is being forwarded to the third party, and third party will deliver that product to us, or third party will deliver the product to the e-tailer, and e-tailer will deliver the product to us. So they are not keeping any inventory, so they are not investing money in keeping inventory. So it's a, what we can say, it's a very good example of supply chain management, that one person is ordering to another person is forwarding that order to the third person is again giving back the order to this particular e-tailer, and e-tailer is now making sure that he is sending it to the customer, and customer is paying to the e-tailer. E-tailer is then paying it to the third party for the value of the product or price of the product. So no investment is required in inventory maintenance. Next one, that is why the prices are lower. Next one, increase usage of classified sites and with more consumer buying and selling second hand goods. Now second hand goods are also available. You might have come across that if we are say if we want to purchase a mobile, and if we just search for mobile, we will often come across with a word, a highlighted word is mentioned, and that is refurbished. So refurbished means it's a second hand mobile. So same is the case with other goods also. So second hand goods are also being sold online, and it is at affordable price, plus some guarantee or warranty is also given by the e-tailers for the authenticity or durability of that particular product. Next one, evolution of online marketplace model with sites like Amazon, Flipkart, eBay, Infibeam, Traders, etc. So with the emergence of these sites, and every new coming site is coming up with new ideas, new practices, new facilities, or new incentives. So benefits are being shared with the customers. Now, all these benefits the customer may not get when he is going for a physical shopping at a physical shop. So coupons are given to the customer by e-tailers. Concession is given. Then certain lucky draw coupons are also given. So various other type of facilities are given to the customers to attract them towards that particular e-tailer, or to retain them, or to attract new customers also. So these are some of the factors which have resulted in the growth of e-commerce in the country. Now we will move on to the another concept which is called as electronic contract. Now electronic contract is a contract. In simple words, we can say that electronic contract is a contract which is electronic contract is a contract which is entered into by which is entered into electronic form by both the parties to the contract. So we all know what is a contract because we have discussed in semester 1 that what is a contract. So contract is a document where one party promises or gives an offer and the other party accepts that offer. The acceptance of this offer and acceptance, if it is accompanied by legal obligation, then it is called as contract. Now, electronic contract are entered into electronic form, but the weightage, same weightage is given to the electronic contract as it was given to the, or as it is given to the contract which is entered in physical form. So electronic contracts that are not paper based but rather in electronic form are born out of the need of speed, convenience, and efficiency. So two things they have mentioned in here on this slide. One, that electronic contracts are those contracts which are not in paper form, which are in electronic form. Then the reason for the birth of electronic contract is also mentioned. Now, people want to enter into a contract in a speedy manner. They do not want to enter into a contract which will take days together. Because if a party is living in, say, Delhi, and that party wants to enter into a contract with a person who is living in Pune, first, the person who is living in Delhi, he will send a physical offer to the person who is living in Pune. It will reach the person by, say, two days. Then once it is reached to the person, he will read the terms and condition. If he is satisfied with the terms and condition, he will put his signature and he will send it back. That means he will accept that offer and he will send it back to the person who is living in Delhi. Again, it will take 2-3 days to reach Delhi. So in all, we can say 4-5 days or 7 days at least it takes when two people wants to enter into a contract which is physical in nature. And if the people are not at the same place, they are at the different place, and but they want to enter into a contract in physical form. So to avoid this delay, the emergence of electronic contracts started taking place. So electronic contracts are born out of the need for speed, convenience, and efficiency. Next, in the electronic age, the whole transaction can be completed in seconds with both the parties simply affixing their digital signatures to an electronic copy of the contract. So now we had just discussed the example that at least 4, 5, or 7 days used to take place if two people used to decide that yes, they will enter into an agreement that it will be in physical format. But nowadays, the agreement between both the person who are living in Delhi and the other person is living in Pune, or a person is living in Delhi and the other person is living in New York, both want to enter into a contract. That contract can be entered within seconds, if it is entered in electronic format, because offer can directly be sent to the person. The person can check the offer and immediately he can send the acceptance. Only thing required here is that both the parties should affix their digital signature at the end of the offer as well as at the end of the acceptance, and after that at the end of the contract. So in electronic age, the whole transaction can be completed within seconds with both the parties simply affixing their digital signatures to an electronic copy of the contract. So within seconds, it can be completed. So we will stop here as we are nearing end, only say 10 minutes are remaining. We will not be able to cover the next topic. So we will stop here. Again, when we will be meeting tomorrow, we will try to complete this particular topic and we will proceed with the next topic. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Tomorrow again, we will be meeting. Tomorrow, the timing may be at 11 in the morning. We will let you know about the exact timing. Maybe it can be 11 a.m. in the morning. Thank you all once again for attending today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.